This is 5 contract targets for the Dolphins for 2027 ahead of that November 1 deadline. I'm Phoenix Trinidad. This is Darren Parkin. Darren, the Dolphins, they're getting closer to a finals berth.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought this season, post Wayne Bennett's departure, that they might slip a touch and it would be a complete reset, but they actually moved a little bit closer. Easily the highest scoring team in the competition, but ranked 11th defensively. So obviously the key is to get that balance right. They had quite a few injuries, but they can definitely score. They're a dangerous side. But if they could just tighten up at the other end, then they could potentially be a little bit better than a finalist. They could jump up and challenge towards top 4. So there's a bit to work with there.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so before we get into the options, just remember this video is brought to you by ZeroTackle.com. Not only is it Australia's #1 independent NRL news source, it also has games. So test your footy knowledge at NRL Streaker or NRL Name Scramble at ZeroTackle.com. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We have plenty of NRL content coming out, including during the off-season. So with all that out of the way, let's take a look at 5 November 1 targets for the Dolphins. Alrighty, Darren, so the Dolphins, they're looking at 2027. They're pretty settled. They have a decent best 17 for 2027. Off contract at the end of 2026, you have Jake Averillo, Selwyn Cobos. So what are they looking for in terms of signings?
Yeah, obviously they want to lock those guys away fairly quickly. The longer they sit on their hands, the more likely it is that someone comes across, offers them a bit more job security and swoops in. Forward depth a little bit thin. You look at Sewer and Rasmussen, pushing towards the fringes of first grade by the time 2027 starts. 5'8" probably one of their biggest concerns, given Nicarima unlikely to re-sign, and they need some reinforcements in the back line as well. I think the squad looks pretty good for 2026. They've just got to make sure that a few things don't slip through the cracks for 2027.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, for 2027, the only other question is their salary cap, probably going to be stretched thanks to the re-signing of your Herbie Farnworth and Katoa and Hammer. So, looking at the first option for the Dolphins, Jye Gray from the Rabbitohs, a very exciting signing if they can land him.
Yeah, really like him. His hard-nosed approach. We mentioned that Nicarima unlikely to re-sign beyond 2026, which opens up the number 6. So, Jye Gray, we imagine, will be in high demand, but the Dolphins have a few really good selling points in terms of what they offer as well. 5'8" might be the most obvious role for him. There's a few things there. He can make it in any number of roles, but money and available salary cap space could be the real question for the Dolphins and where they sit in that space. But I reckon he would be quite an appealing option, or they would be quite an appealing option for Jye as well if he was to line them up with other offers that he receives.
Yep, absolutely. So speaking of that sort of versatility, that utility option, number 2 is Jaxon Purdue from the Cowboys.
Yeah, obviously as it stands, it's possible that they'll need either a centre or a 5'8" heading into 2027, looking at how they recruit and how they retain some of these other guys. Purdue has played in both positions for the Cowboys. He'll keep getting better if he locks into one in particular. Perth will be, I think, heavily interested in his services as well. But the Dolphins can obviously give him the option to stay in Queensland, obviously significantly more south than Townsville. But that might be a decent selling point as well.
Yep, absolutely. And option number 3, so Josh Curran from the Bulldogs. He's come up a lot in this series because he's out of contract at the end of 2026, obviously. But he'd be a decent signing. Can slot in at the Dolphins as well.
Yeah, been playing slightly out of position. All the indicators are that he will probably leave. He's been discussed in terms of going up to rep honours as well, can play in the middle or on the edge. And a lot of clubs are obviously going to chase him. The Dolphins, needing more through their forward pack, could have a crack. So, as we mentioned, money might be the issue by comparison to some of the other clubs that might be able to spend a little bit more, but they might be able to get him over the line by selling him the role that he wants to play with a side on the on the up.
Yep. And another one, option number 4, Lindsay Smith from the Panthers.
Yeah, he's come up a little bit as well with the Panthers, with a couple of players that they'd be really keen to try to lock away. if you look at, despite struggling to hang on to a best 17 spot towards the back end of his career, it looks like it'll be the final deal for the career of, Felice Kafusi. So they're obviously going to have to look at some things in terms of long term. Thomas Flegler recovers from a shoulder injury that's kept him sidelined, but they'll certainly be looking for a little bit more in that space as well. Lindsay Smith's been offered a long-term deal by the Panthers, but he might look to explore options again to get a little bit more, I guess, consolidation into his career.
Yeah, I think taking anyone out of that Panthers system is always a good option. So, all right, this last one, William Kennedy from the Sharks. So a bit of a curveball, this one. He's not going to be a Shark in 2027, but what are we thinking here?
Yeah, they've got Tabuai-Fidow in the number one jumper, but have shown, a willingness to play him in the centres and in other roles as well. You look at Trey Fuller, very real chance of leaving the Dolphins. So that would give them, a real legitimate reason to go after somebody like Kennedy, defensively sound, works really hard. I think he would be a reasonable threat to what they've already built, which is a side that's extremely dynamic that just needs to tighten up on some of their defensive stuff. So you would think that Perth would be the favourite to get his services, but that's not to say they can't have a go.
Yeah, I do love Hammer in the centres, so that would be an interesting one. Let us know in the comments what you think of our 5 contract options for the Dolphins. Thank you, Darren. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and we'll catch you on the next one.